So I don't even really know where to start with this one, because the Milwaukee Bucks just pulled off one of the most shocking offseason moves that I've seen in years. And I know people say that all the time, but I actually mean it. Not only did the Bucks go out and land an absolute stud that now has finals experience in Myles Turner, a player that almost nobody thought they had the resources or cap space to get, but they did it by literally waiving and stretching Damian Lillard. And yes, you heard that right, Damian Lillard. The guy they traded for just last year and what was supposed to be the blockbuster move that defined the rest of Giannis' prime is gone. Just like that, no trade, no final playoff run, nothing. He's off the roster, and the craziest part, I kind of think it makes sense, and so does the national media and also Bucks insiders. Now, let's not get it twisted. Waiving Damian Lillard is wild. I don't care how you spin it. I don't care if he was hurt. I don't care if the fit wasn't perfect. It's Damian Lillard. We're talking about a future Hall of Famer, a guy who left Portland to chase a ring, a guy who was supposed to be the missing piece next to Giannis, and for Milwaukee to pull the plug on that duo after just 2 years, one of which Dame barely even played in thanks to his Achilles injury, it's borderline ruthless, but it's also a clear signal that this front office is all in on optimizing what's left of Giannis' prime, and in order to do that, you can't wait around, you have to be aggressive, and this is most definitely aggressive because look, I get why they did it. Dame's contract was enormous. He's coming off a major Achilles injury that sidelined him for most of last season, and even if he comes back fully healthy, there's no guarantee that he's the same Dame that we saw in Portland. I mean, obviously he wouldn't be because that was when he was in his prime and now he's older, and when you're older, you don't come back from injuries the same way. It just takes so much more. It takes so much more of a toll on your body, but that risk, combined with the defensive fit issues and the massive cap hit, made it almost impossible to run it back with him in 2025. So instead, Milwaukee pulled the nuclear option. They stretch his contract, eat a $22 million dead cap hit for the next 5 years, which is gonna sting, and they cleared just enough space to land arguably the best possible fit they could have gotten at the center position in Myles Turner. And this is where the basketball side of this starts to get really interesting, because for as much as people loved Brook Lopez, and Bucks fans had every right to, this version of Myles Turner is like getting a younger, more athletic, and more dynamic version of Brook, and when you're building around Giannis, that's exactly the kind of big you want. Turner is one of the few centers in the league who can stretch the floor, block shots, and not clog up the lane for Giannis. Last season, Turner shot 39% from 3. He's a solid mid-range scorer, and he gives you real rim protection on the defensive end. And I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, so I can tell you all about this guy and how big of a menace he is. He was so frustrating to watch in that playoff series. You couldn't draw up a better fit next to Giannis, even if you tried, especially when you look at the outlook of the East in 2025 and trying to match up with the Cavs, who are like the only healthy team left. What's even more wild is that this wasn't a trade, this wasn't some long rumored deal, this was a straight up free agent signing, and the only reason it was possible was because Milwaukee created cap space by stretching Dame. That's how they did it. That's the part that's still hard to wrap your head around. They essentially turned Dame's contract into dead money to make room for Turner, and from a pure basketball standpoint, I think it might actually be a win. Now, obviously it's not that simple. There are real emotions involved here, and it's worth acknowledging how brutal this has to be for Dame. This man left Portland, his home, for over a decade to go chase a title in Milwaukee. He goes through an extremely tough personal transition he was dealing with a lot of things off the court. Then he deals with a devastating injury, and just as he's trying to rehab and come back, the Bucks waive him. Just like that, it's cold. And from a human standpoint, it sucks. It really does. There's no other way to say it. But again, this front office is making decisions purely based on winning. It's business, and it's clear they believed the Dame experiment had kind of run its course. And I think what makes this even more fascinating is the mixed reporting coming out about Giannis. Chris Haynes is saying Giannis is a little upset about Dame being waived, but then Brian Windhorst is reporting that Giannis himself was helping recruit Myles Turner. So what's the truth? It's probably somewhere in the middle, but I'm going to go with Brian Windhorst. He's a lot more trustworthy of a reporter, but Giannis might not have wanted Dame to get waived, but he also at the same time could have known the Bucks needed a new path forward. He's not dumb. He knows the clock is ticking, and maybe this was the move that he thought kept the Bucks competitive in the East. Because if you really zoom out and look at the reality of things, this does put Milwaukee right back in the thick of things. The East is wide open right now. The Celtics have injury concerns, especially after Jaylen Brown's lingering knee issues, and then Porzingis is obviously out of the door. The Knicks made some moves, adding more depth with their trade for Malcolm Brogdon. Orlando's upcoming. I think if they can stay healthy, they got a nice young squad that could do some damage, especially if Paolo Banchero takes another leap. Cleveland's obviously got a shot, especially if Donovan Mitchell stays healthy, but there's no clear dominant favorite, so the Bucks are basically betting that with a healthy Giannis, a revamped big man in Myles Turner, and potentially another move using their mid-level exception, they can be right back in that top 4 conversation. And yeah, they still have the mid-level, that's the scary part. This wasn't some giant sign-and trade where they blew all their assets away. This was cap space maneuvering, which means the Bucks still have some bullets in the chamber. They already just signed Gary Harris to a 2-year deal, giving them a somewhat reliable 3-and-D guard with playoff experience, but they're not done. There's real buzz about names like Quentin Grimes, who's reportedly on the Bucks' radar after his solid showing with the Knicks. Jonathan Kuminga has even been floating around as a potential trade target, given the Warriors' desire to shake things up and they don't want to pay him the $25 million a year that he wants. And if John Horst finds a way to flip Pat Connaughton's contract and open up a few more roster spots, then they're not just building a team, they're building depth, playoff caliber depth at that. And speaking of Horst, I think it's time to give this man his flowers for at least a second here, because you can say what you want about how the Dame thing played out, but this dude has been in his bag since he got hired. The Drew Holiday trade, the Dame trade, now this. He's aggressive, he's creative, and he clearly understands the stakes. When you have Giannis on your roster, there is no time to rebuild. There's no punting away a season. It's win now or risk losing the face of your franchise, and he absolutely gets that. But back to Turner, let's talk fit one more time, because this is really where the move shines. Turner gives you a guy who can replicate almost everything Brook Lopez did, and in some areas he's better, he's younger, he's quicker, he can guard in space more effectively, and offensively, he gives you a legit pick and pop threat that defenses have to respect. Giannis is going to feast with Turner stretching the floor, and defensively you can still play drop when you want to, you can still anchor your scheme around rim protection, but now you also have the flexibility to switch or play smaller lineups when it's needed. And let's not forget, this move also helps Bobby Portis. Bobby gets to stay in his natural 6-man role where he can come in and score in bunches without the pressure of starting at the 5. You now have options. You've got Jericho Sims potentially back as another big body after his solid minutes last season, and you've got a front court rotation that's both versatile and playoff tested. Of course, there are still questions, like what does this mean for the Bucks defense overall? Do they stick with drop coverage? Do they experiment more with switching? And how does the rest of the guard rotation shake out without Dame? Is Gary Harris enough? Do they make a push for another ball handler? Maybe someone like Tyus Jones? I know he recently just signed another deal, so he's not available, but I'm just talking about a player that's around the same caliber as him. I'm not sure exactly who's still on the market. I'll have to do some research into that. But another question also is, how do they handle Giannis's workload now that he might even be more of a primary initiator on the offensive end? But those are questions for later. The headline right now is simple. The Bucks just shocked the league. They waived a future Hall of Famer and used that money to go all in on a guy who actually makes more sense next to Giannis. And if you're trying to maximize your title window, that's what you do. You make sacrifices, you bet on fit over flash, and that's exactly what Milwaukee did. So yeah, it's still shocking. It's still going to take some time to get used to seeing the Bucks roster without Damian Lillard on it. But as wild as it sounds, this might have been the move that saves their championship aspirations. Let me know what you guys think about this though. Was it too risky? Should the Bucks have kept Dame and run it back one more time? Or are you buying into this new vision? Please let me know. I'm very curious to hear your opinions. I'm going to try to read every single comment. And if you made it to this point in the video and enjoyed, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, because your support truly does mean the world. And also, let me know what you would like to see next. And until then, I will see you all later.